There are interesting new developments in the Chad Daybell case. It's been 3 months since his trial ended, and now Chad Daybell is filing for an appeal. And there are fingers pointed back at the judge. Chad's house also went up for sale just after his trial back in June and sold within days. So what does that mean moving forward? I'm Linda with It's a Crime, so now let's get into it. Chad Daybell had a lengthy trial back in April and May of this year, lasting 8 weeks or so, and there were some interesting moments in it. He was found guilty and sent to death row on multiple counts for the murders back in 2019 of his first wife, Tammy Daybell, and his second wife's children, Tylee, Ryan, and JJ Vallow. Chad's wife, Tammy, was found murdered and found in their bedroom, and I showed in a previous video how she was actually posed after her death. And Tylee and JJ were found in Chad's yard in separate areas. Tylee was dismembered and burned with cause of death unknown, while JJ suffocated to death and was wrapped in a plastic bag and duct taped. And their bodies were found 9 months after the murders in June of 2020. Chad was arrested the day they were found. And the Daybell property went up for sale right after Chad's trial ended. And as some of you know, or most of you may know, Chad's defense attorney, John Pryor, owned it. It was transferred to John through a quitclaim deed. And a quitclaim deed is a legal document used to transfer ownership or interest in a property from one party to another without guaranteeing that the title is clear of any liens or claims. There was also a little bit of controversy surrounding this when John first did it, and interestingly, Chad's daughter Emma and her family moved into the house after Chad was arrested. And side note, Emma also perjured herself on the stand, among others. Also in trial, one of the witnesses outed the fact that John owned the house. And the witness was a past friend of Chad's and a realtor. And John Pryor was asking him questions about, how big the property was. And the realtor said, I don't know, you own it, you tell me how big it is type thing. It was a very shocking moment in court, and it was priceless.
The acreage that you're talking about, do you have any recollection of how much acreage we're talking around that surrounds Chad's house?
You own it. How many acres is it?
Well, I appreciate it. I don't know. Judge, could we have a sidebar?
Yes.
In the listing of the home, it had several pictures, I believe 33 of them. Some of them actually were quite odd, like pictures of light switches, if I remember, or outlets. It was really kind of odd. I've walked through the house before in a previous live stream. And the Daybell house was listed for $350,000, and it sold for $350,000. And the house is 1,894 square feet with 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and it sits on a 3.75 acre lot. Now, it came with a warning in the description when it first was put on the market. It said, there is a very tragic situation with this home. Please have your realtor investigate for you. And a local couple from Idaho purchased the Salem, Idaho property and established a nonprofit called SJ Healing Crossroads, Inc. And apparently the house became a subject of concern for the new owners when they learned that someone intended to turn it into an Airbnb. And the new owners say, quote, "We feel compassion for the families and the community, and we didn't want to see it purchased by someone whose intentions were inappropriate." And they felt it was essential to prevent the property from becoming, a macabre tourist attraction. And the couple, who want to remain anonymous for now, said that their goal is to turn the site into a place of peace, healing, and hope. The couple said, "With the generous donations we receive, we plan to remove the house and outbuildings. Our aim is to transform the site from one marked by sorrow and tragedy into a place of peace, healing, and hope for the community." And in collaboration with some of the victims' families, they are working to ensure that the property serves as a space of healing. And their nonprofit's mission is to offer support to those affected by traumatic experiences or loss. And this project is envisioned as the first of many. They said, "We just hope that they know this is coming from our hearts." And the first step in their vision is to demolish the home and other structures on the property. They said there is nothing that can be done to make it a good place for the victims' families, considering what happened there. And they believe the community, also deeply affected by the tragedy, deserves a fresh start and a transformed space. And the nonprofit is currently raising funds for the demolition and is seeking volunteers to help maintain the grounds until that process is completed. And they are also open to ideas on how to memorialize the space, though any final plans will depend on local zoning regulations. Now, the GoFundMe so far, when I checked yesterday, was $650 out of the $200,000. So as of the time of this recording, and I'll have the link below if you wish to donate. Now, what are your thoughts about the new owners and their new plans? Let me know in the comments below. We'll have a little discussion. Now, recently there was a hearing in court, and Chad wasn't physically present, but he was there on Zoom. He didn't say anything through the hearing, but Chad was granted a legal extension in his death penalty case due to extraordinary circumstances. Chad Daybell's legal team is now appealing his case, seeking post-conviction relief. And post-conviction relief is a legal process where a defendant seeks to modify or overturn their conviction or sentence after the trial has concluded. And it is typically used when new evidence is discovered or there are claims that legal errors or violations occurred during the original trial. And in Chad Daybell's case, his defense team has raised several issues for post-conviction relief, including claims that the Judge Steven Boyce may have made errors. These alleged errors include the denial of a motion to dismiss the grand jury indictment, the exclusion of critical testimony from Dr. Davidson, we'll talk about that in a minute, and allowing the prosecution to amend their indictment after resting their case. Daybell's attorney also questioned the jury instructions on reasonable doubt during both the guilt and sentencing phases, suggesting that there were improper and may have impacted the fairness of the trial. And these issues will be reviewed as part of Daybell's appeal to determine if any of these decisions warrant a modification or reversal of his conviction and death sentence. This is going to be interesting. This process, though, can take years and years. And during this recent hearing, one of Daybell's 3 appellate attorneys, Ian Thompson, outlined the complexity of the case, citing the need to review 16,800 pages of trial transcripts and over 12,700 gigabytes of other materials. And Ian Thompson said that the team are fully dedicated to Chad and to provide him the best representation possible, but stressed that they do need more time to complete the post-conviction process. And the defense team, which has been working with Chad Daybell for less than 3 months, emphasized that they discovered critical information, they said, just before the trial that could alter their approach to his defense. He says, as we continue to investigate, we anticipate uncovering further insights. What are your thoughts on this? This is very curious. I'm curious to know more about, the angle they're going to take. Let me know below. Fremont County prosecuting attorney Lindsay Blake, we love her, did not oppose the request for additional time. She acknowledged the immense amount of evidence involved in this case. However, she warned that the extension should not be indefinite. In Idaho, post-conviction relief motions have 42 days in death penalty cases to be filed after sentencing and hearings, along with a judge's ruling, to be completed within 90 days. And October 15th is the deadline for Chad's case. However, Judge Boyce agreed that there's a lot to this case and said that this case presents extraordinary circumstances that make it impossible to complete the post-conviction petition by October 15th. So the Idaho Supreme Court must now approve the judge's ruling for the post-conviction relief process to proceed, and Pryor is requesting that all case motions, records, and transcripts be included in the appeal, noting that Daybell, who is incarcerated and indigent, can't afford these fees. And the appellate process, which is common in death penalty cases, may take several years to resolve. And as part of Idaho's legal system, the Supreme Court automatically reviews all death penalty sentences handed down by trial courts, a process that operates alongside any appeals filed by defendants. Now, taking a deeper look at the questions in the appeal, John Pryor asked the Supreme Court to consider the following issues. Did Judge Steven Boyce err in not granting Daybell's motion to dismiss the grand jury indictment in the case? Second, did Judge Boyce err ruling Dr. Davidson's report and testimony would be inadmissible in this case? Now, looking back through this case, I found Dr. Davidson and remembered it was quite some time ago. So in January of 2021, a hearing took place to determine whether Special Prosecutor Rob Wood would remain on the Chad and Lori Vallow Daybell case, and the defense attorneys, Mark Means at the time, who Lori Daybell called her blue-eyed baby boy, no joke, and John Pryor accused Rob of prosecutorial misconduct. And they claimed that Rob Wood tried to improperly influence Lori's sister Summer Shiflett and Lori's sister-in-law Zulema Pastanas during interviews in Arizona in October of 2020. And Zulema was married to Lori's brother Alex Cox, who was Lori's protector and also was involved in the murders. He couldn't go to prison though because he was dead. And the allegations stemmed from an audio recording made by Garrett Smith, who was the attorney for Summer Shiflett and for Zulema Pastanas. And in the recording, Wood discussed details of the case, mentioning plans to charge the Daybells with conspiracy to commit murder and stating that the case against Lori was stronger than the one against Chad. He also criticized Mark Means' capabilities as a lawyer. And Dr. James Davidson, a forensic psychologist hired by the defense, testified that Wood's comments would have introduced bias into Summer Shiflett's perspective. So University of Idaho law professor Samuel Newton also testified, suggesting that while prosecutors can interview witnesses, they must avoid pressuring them into adopting a specific narrative, which could cross ethical lines. And Rob Wood denied these allegations, asserting that Summer and Zulema's attorney was present during the interview and had not raised any objections at the time. Obviously, as we know, Rob Wood went on to stay and prosecute the case, and here we are today. Well, that's part of this motion. Other questions in the motion include, did Judge Steven Boyce err in allowing the prosecution to amend their indictment after they rested? That was a really scary moment in trial, as there was a major clerical error found in the indictment. And just after the prosecution rested their case, Judge Boyce identified incorrect dates in the first-degree murder charge for J.J. Vallow. And the indictment mistakenly listed the death dates of Tylee Ryan instead of J.J., complicating this case. And the defense attorney, John Pryor, argued the error was significant enough to drop the charge, claiming that the prosecution lost their chance to correct it. John Pryor requested a directed verdict, asserting that the state's evidence was insufficient to prove Daybell's involvement in the murders of JJ and Tylee, and he said this is exactly the type of mistake or inadvertence that the court would or could reopen the case for. And it was a long 3 hours waiting as Judge Boyce gave the prosecution time to come back and argue. Ultimately, though, the judge ruled and said that the court did not authorize an amendment that was made only a few months before the hearing, and he deemed it clerical, and away they went. He also said that valid witness testimony and sufficient evidence supported the charges. But clearly, this is now coming back onto the appeal to fight, as once the prosecution rests, it's supposed to rest. And the last two was, did Judge Steven Boyce err in providing to the jury the most current jury instruction of reasonable doubt at the guilt stage and providing the jury the most currently instruction of reasonable doubt at the sentencing phase? Now, not including Chad Daybell, Idaho currently has 8 death row inmates. Chad's lucky number 9. And you might be wondering about Chad's wife or not, Lori Vallow Daybell. She's awaiting her murder trial for Charles Vallow, her 4th husband, which is set for February of 2025. She was already convicted in her last trial for the murders of Tammy, Tylee, and JJ, and now we'll see what happens for Charles Vallow and her nephew-in-law, Brandon Boudreau, who had an attempt made on his life, but thankfully it failed. I'll definitely be following that one and watching her go down there too. I really wish that Melanice, as we call her, or Melanie Pulowski, formerly Boudreau, would get her slap on the wrist, but I don't think it's coming, do you? In July, Lori's lawyers filed a motion to deny the media from filming the most recent court proceeding, and her defense team claimed that the local news outlet Fox 10's coverage has vilified Lori, impacting her constitutional rights to a fair trial. To that I say, she did that all by herself. Her defense team further claimed that finding a jury pool for this upcoming trial would be difficult due to the media coverage, and her actions in court are quite disgusting, in my opinion, and disrespectful. It's like a show every time when it comes to Lori Daybell. She has a hearing as of the time of this recording. It's today, September 6th, I'll be checking in on that and provide perhaps an update in a separate video. Check out here what YouTube thinks you want to watch, and check out this video as well. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.